Hi, I'm Kate Miller, Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries at Dandridge First United Methodist Church. You're joining us on week 5 of our 16-week young adult study of the Gospel of Mark. Each week we're reading a new chapter and taking out a new passage of that chapter to talk about. So let's go ahead and jump to the Word. Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, she told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." So here's the scene. Jesus, this itinerant rabbi, this Messiah who has been traveling and teaching and preaching and healing people, has come through town. His reputation precedes him. People know that really incredible stuff happens when he's around, that miracles are occurring. And there's this woman who is so incredibly ill. She's so sick, she keeps bleeding, and she keeps paying the doctors, and they keep telling her things to do, and they're just not working. Nothing works. She's not getting better. In fact, she's even getting worse. So she hears that Jesus is coming to town, and she wholeheartedly believes that this is her answer. The doctors and the medicine and all of the known world aren't working, but she believes that Jesus can heal her. She thinks if she could so much as touch his clothes, that she could be freed from this pain. Talk about faith. So she goes to where Jesus is traveling, and she bravely reaches out and touches the hem of his cloak from behind him. And now remember, there are a lot of people here to see Jesus. She is not the only one marveling at the mystery that is the Messiah, but she is incredibly devout. It could have been anyone in this crowd that touched his cloak. In fact, there are probably others touching it too, some on accident, some on purpose, but Jesus specifically feels her touch. Perhaps it felt desperate because of her circumstance, or maybe it just felt really faithful and trusting, or perhaps it felt strong because of the amount of her need. But Jesus turns and he asks who it was. The disciples are like, "Jesus, there are a lot of people here. It could have been anyone." But Jesus knows that it's someone who did it intentionally. And when he says this, she knows that he means her. So she speaks up and she confesses. He loves her and he recognizes her faith, and at the very touch of his cloak, she's healed. And I think it would be really easy for us to say, well, Jesus heals the faithful. But that's not always true, at least not in the way that we mean it here on earth. You see, both of my grandmothers passed away from illnesses, one from cancer and then the other from COPD and emphysema. Both of them were faithful in their own ways. One of them was a devout Catholic, and the other was an avid reader of Billy Graham, particularly anything that had to do with angels. And when each of them died, I was left feeling wounded every time someone would say, well, God saves faithful people from their hardships and their illnesses, because my grandmothers were faithful. And the fact that they had passed away because of their illnesses didn't mean that God deemed their faith any less important. So the more that I prayed about and studied what was pulling at my heartstrings, the more I realized that we're getting this story wrong. We are so literal when we think about how Jesus saves this woman, how he heals her. Yes, he heals her physically, and he still has the ability to do that today if it fits into the will and the design of his kingdom. But the true miracle is the eternal healing that we receive in heaven. Because there are pains that won't be healed for us on this side of eternity. There are hurts that we are going to carry with us the entire time we live our lives on earth, whether that's physical or emotional. But in heaven, we are restored as fully healed beings. We receive a peace that lasts forever. And that is the miraculous healing that we each get in Jesus. And I believe that in heaven, my grandma has no more cancer, and my Graham can breathe freely. I believe that Jesus said to them as they entered his kingdom, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." And I believe that one day he will say that to you and to me. So today, your questions for thought are, number 1, what do you need to be healed from? Are you reaching out to touch the clothes of the Savior? And number 2, do you believe that healing for eternity is as miraculous or even more miraculous than earthly healing? Thanks for joining us this week in our study of Mark chapter 5. Comment below to let me know what you think of this passage and this study. And don't forget to like the church on Facebook so you can follow us for all of our activity announcements, our calendar postings, and also to join us for services at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Sunday, both virtual and in person. I look forward to seeing you next week when we study about Mark chapter 6.